Okay, so what do you actually do when someone close to you, someone you care about just, constantly drains your energy? It's often kind of quietly feeling maybe trapped but what if you could go beyond just noticing that feeling, that drain, and really get a handle on how to deal with it, like in your actual day-to-day life? With real strategies that work. That's what we're diving into today. How you can start reclaiming your peace, protecting your own well-being when you're in these really challenging relationships.
Yeah, and it's important to maybe define what we mean here. Because toxic people, that term gets thrown around a lot, and it can sound, well, a bit hard. Maybe judgmental. What we're focusing on are individuals whose patterns of behavior, negativity, manipulation, control, whatever it is, just consistently deplete your energy. And over time, that really damages your well-being. It isn't always like intentional malice. Often it's just these deeply ingrained habits they might not even be fully aware of. But the effect on you, that's profound. It's more than just feeling uncomfortable. I mean, psychological research is pretty clear on this. Prolonged exposure to these kinds of draining dynamics, it significantly bumps up cortisol.
Cortisol. It's a stress hormone, right? So it's not just in your head, it's actually a physical thing happening.
Yeah,
Absolutely. A measurable physical response. And it's not just temporary stress. There's research on something called allostatic load, basically the wear and tear on your body from chronic stress, elevated cortisol, other stress hormones. Over time, this can lead to systemic inflammation, problems with immune function, even actual structural changes in the brain, like in the hippocampus, which is key for memory, for emotional regulation. So we're talking about real physiological damage these relationships can inflict. It kind of shifts the perspective, doesn't it? It's not just managing feelings, it's self-preservation.
That really lands. It makes addressing this feel less like a nice to have and more like essential, protecting your actual health, reclaiming your life. Okay, so today we're not just pointing fingers at the problem, we're looking at powerful things you can do, ways to defend your energy, your peace. We'll dig into specific strategies, and to make it really concrete, we'll follow a story, someone's real experience, that shows how these things can actually play out, how they can be transformative. All right, let's get into it. So, okay, you've recognized the drain. You understand the potential impact, even physically. What's the very first step, the first concrete thing you can do to start changing things? From everything I've seen, it nearly always seems to circle back to setting clear boundaries first.
It really is the foundation. Absolutely. Think about Sarah's situation. We can use her as an example. She was in this relationship, right? And there was this constant kind of low-level criticism about, how she dressed, who she talked to, even small opinions she had. At first, she kind of brushed it off, telling herself, he's just being protective, or maybe he doesn't mean it like that. But slowly, steadily, that negativity just chipped away their confidence. It was insidious. She started feeling smaller, less sure of herself, always walking on eggshells, kind of editing what she said or did to avoid, another comment. That's a classic sign a boundary is definitely needed there.
And that kind of criticism is so tricky, isn't it? Because sometimes it does come disguised as concern. Makes it harder to see it for what it is. So how did Sarah bridge that gap from realizing, okay, this isn't right, to actually doing something, setting that boundary?
That's the leap, isn't it? It was a process. She learned about healthy boundaries, what they actually were, and crucially, she realized it wasn't about starting a fight. It was about defining herself, self-respect. So the next time her partner made one of those cutting remarks, this time about her friends, instead of defending or shrinking away, she just looked at him calmly, firmly, and she said, I don't accept being spoken to that way. If it happens again, I'll leave the conversation.
Wow, okay. That sounds simple, but saying it, that takes guts. But I imagine it wasn't like flipping a switch, right? What happened next? Did he just accept it?
Oh, no. You're absolutely right. It wasn't magic. And this is so important for people listening to get that one sentence delivered with that new resolve. That was her first act of taking back power. But he didn't just say, okay. He initially pushed back, escalated even, accused her of being too sensitive or making a big deal out of nothing. Classic ways to make someone doubt themselves. Gaslighting, basically. So Sarah then had to find this inner strength, discipline. She calmly repeated her boundary. I told you how I feel. I'm going to step away now. And then this is key. She did it. She physically left the room.
Right, the follow-through. It's the action that makes the words mean something. So boundaries, they're not really walls to keep everyone out, are they? It's more like doors. You control who comes in, how they behave when they're there.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. Doors you control. It's defining your space. This is me. This is where I start. This is where you end. It's about reclaiming that personal power, not about total isolation. You're defining the terms of engagement, really. Creating a safe space for yourself. And it helps to think about different kinds, There are physical boundaries, your space, touch, time boundaries, protecting your schedule, saying no, emotional boundaries, how much you share, not absorbing others' feelings, deciding what emotional behavior you'll tolerate, and verbal boundaries, like Sarah said, what kind of language, what tone is okay with you.
That breakdown is really helpful. But what about someone listening who's thinking, I could never say that? They fear the conflict or being labeled difficult. Any tips for actually voicing them?
That fear is so real and understandable. Often we're sort of conditioned to put others' comfort first, aren't we? One technique people find useful is the broken record. You just calmly, neutrally repeat your boundary. Don't get pulled into justifying it or arguing about it. Like, I understand you see it differently, but I'm not discussing my finances. Repeat as needed. Another is called fogging. You acknowledge what they said without agreeing or getting defensive. I hear that's your opinion. I've made my choice. It diffuses the need for them to argue. The key is aiming for calm assertiveness, not aggression. Just clear, concise, and consistent. And yeah, expect some pushback sometimes. You're changing the rules of the game, basically.
That makes sense. Really practical stuff. So as you're listening, maybe take a second. Think about your own life. Are there any doors you need to start controlling? Any unspoken rules or permissions you've kind of let slide that are now costing you your peace, your energy, maybe even your health? Just identifying those areas is a huge step. Okay, so that idea of reclaiming power with boundaries is huge. But what if the person doesn't respect them? Or they push back hard, like Sarah's partner did at first? This brings us nicely into the next strategy, which can feel counterintuitive maybe, but it's incredibly powerful, limiting your emotional fuel. This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
It really does. And it's so crucial for finding any kind of lasting peace in these situations. Because often, challenging individuals, they kind of thrive on drama. They feed off your reactions, your anger, your frustration, your guilt, maybe your sadness. Imagine like a performer on stage. If the audience just sits there blank-faced, the energy dies, right? It's similar. If you keep giving them big emotional reactions, you're basically handing them the script. You're fueling their fire. It gives them what they need. Control, importance, relevance, whatever it is they're seeking from the interaction.
Feels like they're mining for a specific emotional response, and if you don't give it, the whole thing sort of fizzles out.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And this is where things like intermittent reinforcement come in. It's why it's so hard sometimes. The person might be critical one minute, then charming the next. That up and down keeps you hooked, you know? Hoping for the good version. It makes emotional disengagement really difficult, but also really necessary. So back to Sarah. After she started setting those boundaries, her partner didn't just stop trying. He actually, for a while, tried harder to push her buttons, to get that reaction he was used to. But instead of falling back into the old pattern, getting angry, feeling guilty, explaining herself over and over, she started practicing the second strategy. Emotional detachment. She made a conscious choice. Respond briefly, calmly. Don't escalate. So when he criticized her clothes again, maybe she'd just say, I feel comfortable in this, and then change the subject. Or just walk away, no big defense, no lengthy explanations, definitely no big dramatic fight.
And the result was kind of amazing, wasn't it? The conflict just lost its oxygen.
Yeah.
Without her feeding it emotionally, it couldn't really keep going.
Yeah, precisely. It confirms what a lot of research suggests. When you stop pouring fuel on the toxic fire, the manipulator loses their leverage. That emotional payoff they were counting on, it's just not there. They're left holding the match, but there's nothing left to ignite. It just fizzles. And it's important to be clear here. Detachment isn't about being cold or heartless. Not at all. It's more like emotional self-defense, strategic psychological distance. It lets you step back, see the dynamic for what it is often, and attempt to get a rise out of you and consciously choose not to play that game.
Right, so less like building a higher wall and more like wearing emotional armor, shielding your core from their chaos. But that sounds incredibly hard, especially if you genuinely care about the person. What does that actually look like moment to moment, besides just walking away?
Oh, it is incredibly hard, no question. It takes real conscious effort. It means recognizing when you're being provoked, seeing it not as a personal truth you have to defend, but as a bid for your emotional energy. So, for instance, instead of getting defensive about some baseless accusation, you might just calmly say, okay, I hear that's your perspective, or that's one way to look at it, and then stop. Don't engage further. Or if someone's trying to drag you into drama between them and someone else, triangulation it's called, you might say, that sounds like something you need to talk to them about directly. You're like an observer of the chaos rather than a participant. It protects your inner peace, stops you being used as a pawn. Exactly. And in those situations, sometimes the healthiest, the most self-compassionate choice you can make is to leave. It's a really hard truth, but essential sometimes for your own long-term survival, really. Sarah's story, it eventually got to this point. Despite all her efforts, the boundaries, the detachment, she finally had to face this painful reality, the criticism, the manipulation. It wasn't going to stop. The pattern was just too ingrained in her partner, too resistant to real change. It wasn't about her failing. It was about a fundamental mismatch in how they related to each other. And that's when she made what she later called the hardest decision of her life. She ended the relationship. It wasn't easy. There was grief, doubt, pain, mourning the relationship she had hoped for. But looking back, she described that moment of final separation. She said it was the moment I could finally breathe again. Just this profound sense of release from the constant tension, the anxiety, the endless effort of just trying to hold on to her own sense of reality.
Wow, the moment I could finally breathe again. That phrase just says so much, doesn't it? It really captures the sheer weight that gets lifted. It underscores that sometimes the cost of staying in a situation that's truly deeply toxic, it's just far, far higher than the fear or the pain of leaving.
Absolutely. And this isn't just about romantic partners either. Research backs this up across different contexts.
Yeah.
Removing even one consistently negative, draining influence, maybe it's a coworker, a friend who's always critical, a family member who demands too much removing, that often leads to really significant improvements in overall well-being, mental clarity, even things like productivity. It just creates space. Space for positive energy, for growth, for relationships that actually nourish you instead of depleting you.
That's so true. It can ripple out across all parts of your life. But walking away, it often comes with this feeling of failure, doesn't it? Or like you're giving up. People worry about that stigma.
They do, but we really need to reframe that. Walking away from a situation that is harming you isn't giving up. It's the opposite. It's reclaiming your life, your health, your peace. It's an act of profound self-respect. It's saying my well-being matters. It's acknowledging that your energy is better spent nurturing yourself, finding connections that are reciprocal and healthy. Sometimes the bravest thing is to say, enough, this isn't working for me, and choose yourself. Create the space for something better to come in.
That's such a powerful reframe. It honors the courage it takes and the huge positive impact it can ultimately have. Choosing yourself, recognizing where your energy is best invested. Okay, so let's just quickly pull those threads together. Dealing with challenging people, reclaiming your peace. So we talked about 3 big strategies. 1, set those clear boundaries. Remember, they're doors you control, not walls. 2, limit your emotional investment. Stop fueling the drama. Practice that strategic detachment. And 3, know when walking away is the healthiest choice. Prioritize your well-being, even when it's hard. So take a moment now. Think about your own life, your own relationships. Is there someone whose interactions consistently leave you feeling drained or smaller? Which one of these strategies feels like maybe, just maybe, you try it out, even in a really small way, just to see what happens? Maybe it's just one clear boundary. Or taking that pause before you react next time.
Because at the end of the day, You're never truly powerless in these situations. You always, always have a choice. A choice in how you engage, how you protect your own energy, how you define what's okay for you. And by consciously making that choice, by taking these steps, even small ones, that's how you reclaim your power. That's how you reclaim your life.
A really empowering thought to end on. The control is always there, waiting for you to exercise it.
Yeah.
Thank you for exploring this with us today, and we hope these insights help you on your own path towards greater peace and strength.